beautiful roar tonight. Falcon 9 now 1 minute into flight. So far, everything looking good. Coming up next will be Max Q, and that is when the maximum aerodynamic forces will be pushing against Falcon 9. And there we go. Usually when you see that trail, it is now going faster than the speed of sound, and it is passing through Max Q. So far good, 90 seconds into flight now. Absolutely gorgeous launch tonight. As it gets higher up in the atmosphere, you will start to see that plume expand as it gets into the thinner parts of the atmosphere. You'll also notice the color change as it goes more from that orange color to a bluish purple as it gets higher up. So coming up next will be 3 events in rapid succession starting about 35 seconds from now. First off will be MECO, or main engine cutoff, when those 9 Merlin engines will shut down. That'll be followed by stage separation, when the first and second stages will separate away from each other, and that will then be followed by SES1, or second engine start 1, when the Merlin vacuum engine on stage 2 will ignite for the first time of 2 on this mission, and that should be about 10 seconds away from all of that happening. There's that gorgeous blue color, and we should be coming up now on MECO, right on time. Next up will be stage separation, and we should see a green flash, and there it is. That is ignition of stage 2. You could see some of the plume there in the plume, stage 1 using its thrusters there to orient itself. Absolutely gorgeous. Stage 2 now continuing on. Again, this going to medium Earth orbit, so a little bit higher than we're used to seeing on those Starlink launches. And in about 20 seconds or so, we should have the fairing halves separating away. One is an active half and the other is passive. So that means one has a pusher mechanism on it and the other just gets pushed away. Those will then make their way back down to Earth with some thrusters and parachutes before being recovered and hopefully flown again. We should be coming up on that now. Keep an eye out in the plume. You might be able to see them. And there you go. You can actually see some of them. There is that separation of those fairing halves. Again, Bob is the vessel located downrange to recover those. And those have now flown for 2 and 3 flights, respectively. Here's what it looks like on the SpaceX feed, which is a couple seconds behind ours. Beautiful. And there is the GPS-3 satellite now exposed to space. So far, everything continuing to look good 4 minutes into flight. Coming up next after this, about 6 minutes or so into flight, so about 2 minutes or so from now, will be the first stage entry burn. So we like to say that's fighting fire with fire, where it will start with a singular engine and then work its way up to 3 of those engines on the base of the booster, and it will create a sort of plume around it from the flames that will help it as it gets into the thicker parts of the atmosphere and to deal with some of that atmospheric heating. That on this particular one is a bit of a long burn. This one's about a 30-second, according to SpaceX, planned entry burn. A reminder again, this coming from a much steeper and higher trajectory than we're used to seeing for those Starlink missions, so that is why it's a bit of a longer burn. And same even with the ISS crew missions. Those are much shorter. That one, of course, going into a shallower orbit. So low Earth orbit versus this one going into medium Earth orbit a couple thousand kilometers up. And you can see there on the left side, the altitude is decreasing on stage 1, so it has passed apogee, or the highest point in its trajectory. So now the speed will be going up and the altitude will be going down. Meanwhile, you can see on the bottom right there, stage 2 continuing its burn. Everything looking good so far. 154 kilometers in altitude, coming up on about 13,000 kilometers per hour. And again, we call that SES1, or second engine start 1, because that is the first of 2 burns that it will be doing this evening. So this first one will last for about 8 minutes. And then at about 1 hour and 3 minutes into flight, it will relight one more time for an approximately 40-second burn. And that will be followed about 20 minutes after that by the deployment of that GPS satellite, which again, that is GPS 3-8, also known as Space Vehicle 10, also known as Hedy Lamarr. We should be coming up now on that entry burn. Now 75 kilometers up. Just read the instructions, is located downrange northeast of where it took off from, ready for this booster to land on it. And there we go. You could see there is engine ignition. There's the single engine. And then once you see that sort of rectangular shape, that means that the 3 engines are lighting up in that 1-3-1 burn. So that means it will drop back down to a single engine before shutting down after this. Then this one longer than we're used to seeing, about 30 seconds or so per the timeline provided by SpaceX here. Here we go, down to a single engine and shut down. You could also see those grid fins when we had that view as well. Those starting to encounter the plasma now as it gets into the thicker parts of the atmosphere. Not doing much at the moment, but as it does get to the thicker parts, especially right before landing, we will see those start maneuvering and helping to steer Falcon 9 towards the deck of the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Coming up now on about a minute left of this burn here on stage 2. And this is one where we should see SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1, happen prior to the commencement of the landing burn by a couple seconds. They'll be close to each other. So now 7.5 minutes into flight. First stage now only 12 kilometers in altitude. Stage 2 now approaching 23,000 kilometers in altitude and about 170 kilometers in altitude. Or excuse me, 23,000 at speed, 168 currently in altitude. So we're going to keep an eye out now in the next 10 seconds or so for SECO, second engine cutoff. And we should be seeing that any second here. Again, the times they give us are approximate. Of course, based off of actual trajectory data is when we see it. And there we go. There is SECO, second engine cutoff. And we have ignition of the single engine for landing here on the booster. You see those grid fins doing their work. On the right, the live view from the deck of the drone ship. You can see it's already wet and ready for the booster to land on it. Coming up next will be that landing leg deploy. The grid fins will lock in place. Landing leg deploy. And touchdown! The booster now completing its 7th flight, earning the -8, so beat 1095. Now, the record holder for the most consecutive landings on the same drone ship. Active record there, with 7 of its 7 landings all happening on Just Read the Instructions. A beautiful launch. Everything looked great there. Of course, as mentioned, that is just the first of 2 burns. This second stage will have another burn to do. That's scheduled for about 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 31 seconds after launch. That is a 37-second burn, if my math is correct here. And then that will be followed at T plus 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 19 seconds, by the deploy of the satellite. Of course, we are working on pulling some of those replays. You saw we had some amazing views tonight. I don't know if we have Max back in the field to get his reaction to tonight. Hopefully we'll get the field team and get their commentary here momentarily. But boy, that was a beautiful launch. All the numbers looking good at this point. Great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. And yeah, people saying that seemed like a very loud one tonight. Part of it is also we did have that microphone in a closer vantage point than we're used to having. That one over on the Space Force side, which we appreciate the U.S. Space Force for allowing us the opportunity for certain missions to roll out there, including this one, and have some spectacular views and be able to place those microphones a lot closer. And of course, getting those dual views there from the Space Force side as well as from the Kennedy Space Center side. Let me take a moment to thank some people here.